Hello and welcome to Bangladesh Today. It's been a tumultuous week in Bangladesh where a political revolution of sorts is underway. It began when Abdul Quader Mollah, the Butcher of Mirpur, was convicted of beheading a poet and raping a preteen and shooting 344 people during the Liberation War of 1971 and got a life sentence instead of a capital punishment. Mollah emerged from the courtroom flashing a victory sign. It prompted online activists and bloggers to gather at an intersection in Dhaka to launch a unique protest movement. They came in thousands, and then tens of thousands, and then hundreds of thousands, all through voice of mouth, Facebook, Twitter and blogs, singing songs, coining slogans, poetry, music, and just one demand: justice.
I live in Australia and I am fortunate as a freedom fighter. I had a chance to be here to join the mass people of Bangladesh who has a voice for the right judgment for the war criminals. And we are really proud of the nation that our younger generation has come forward, took the street for the right judgment of the war criminals.
I am one of the online activists, and we are protesting against the judgment of a life sentence of the war criminal, Mr. Quader Mollah. Now we are here, we are protesting in demand of his hang till death.
Shahbag Square in Dhaka was renamed Projonmo Chhatar, or New Generation Roundabout. 3 generations of Bangladeshis spoke in one voice. The barbarians of the 1971 war crimes must be given the maximum penalty.
This can become an issue after all. Anything from 1 million people plus died. Hundreds of thousands of women were assaulted and raped. So it's not a minor war crime, it's a very serious war crime. So I understand the Bangladeshi people's urge to do something final, which is the death sentence. But I don't think that's going to solve anything. Bangladesh's real problems are problems of development, of sustainable development, of developing backward areas like the Chittagong hill tracts, where there are people of different tribes who are not the same as the Bangladeshis, so there's trouble. It should have treaties with India on river waters, etc., which didn't happen the last time we met because Mamata Banerjee raised the question of the Tista River and scuttled the talks. But if the government prepares well enough for it, this can be done. So I think it's good to have a more humane and constructive attitude than saying we'll kill all these people. Yes, they are guilty of crimes. Yes, in India, some of them would definitely be hanged. But in the end, what is this revenge going to get them? So I think they want to get the 2 killers in Canada. Well, only if they say that they're not going to give them the death sentence will they get them. And if those 2 are not given the death sentence, then how will they give death sentence to others? So I think it is a complicated issue.
Abdul Quader Mollah and 11 others are accused of collaborating with the Pakistani army in war crimes. The cases have dragged on for years, and the people of Bangladesh are losing patience with the judiciary and political regimes that have colluded in delaying sentencing the criminals.
There is no doubt about who's guilty. For quite some time, while the Pakistanis were still there in Bangladesh, when the liberation movement started, they realized who all the criminals were. Some people like Ziaur Rahman, later president, he was himself a fairly senior officer. And he knows, of course he's been murdered, assassinated since, but he knew who the guilty were, how they operated, how they killed, who helped them and all. And there are other officers also of the East Pakistan Army who deserted from that and supported their country that is what was later called Bangladesh. So I understand the difficulties the youth and others are having of getting a closure. And some political forces are trying to distract attention from other social and economic problems by playing this up, which of course they have a right to do, in the sense that those who are guilty of such terrible crimes against men and women should be punished. The question is, how severely do you want to punish them? And when you do that, will you lose the chance of getting those who have escaped, like the two in Canada? Is that worth it? Or you think, no, well, we're going to hang 50 or 100 people. So these two big leaders, if we lose, it's okay. Basically, Bangladesh has to decide. We can't advise them. We have never had a situation like this except in partition. But partition, no army was involved. It was civilian killing. Here there were 3 armies involved. The Pakistan Army, the Liberation Army of Bangladesh, the Mukti Bahini, which was rising. Officers and soldiers defected and formed units with Indian support, and you had the Indian Army. So in this kind of situation, when there's a lot of death, I've been to Bangabandhu's house, and I was horrified the way that they'd killed the children and how small the children were. They killed the whole family. So I would have no regrets if they are punished severely. But I'm just wondering, to apply closure, how severe would severe be? And to apply closure, could they get the same sentence against those who have taken shelter abroad and on the ground that they are avoiding the death penalty, and the others?
Now, this is a very good beginning, and the process has restarted, as you suggested. But what pains me really is the delay that has been caused by various circumstances. This trial of the war criminals should have been given one of the top priorities in the country, and we failed to do that. I mean, we failed to put on trial the 195 Pakistani soldiers who were identified as very definitely identified as the most criminals among the criminals. So that was because of this adjustment between Pakistan, India and Bangladesh, that we couldn't try them. These people we are trying now are collaborators really. I should think that 2 tribunals are adequate. That is one of my preliminary feelings. But what I feel more is that the process should not merely be hasty, but it should also be thorough. The process should be thoroughgoing process, and it should bring out all the evidences against the criminals, and that the crime should be published and should be known to the people, not only in our country but abroad.
The War Crimes Tribunal, set up in 2010, was mandated to prosecute the guilty, even though 10 of the 11 on trial belonged to the Jamaat-e-Islami, an ally of the opposition BNP. The Jamaat-e-Islami is watching the proceedings at Shahbag with trepidation. The tide has turned in Bangladesh completely against the extremist ideology of hate and violence perpetrated by the Jamaat-e-Islami. The Jamaat and its ways of hartals and burning of cars and public property have plagued the politics of Bangladesh for long. Days before the Shahbag Revolution, the Jamaat called for a series of strikes, vandalizing everything in sight.
সকাল থেকে তো যে জামাত শিবিরের নেতাকর্মীরা জড়ো হচ্ছে, বিভিন্ন জায়গায় চেষ্টা করতেছে মিছিল বের করে ত্রাস সৃষ্টি করার জন্য, গাড়ি ভাঙচুর করার জন্য। এই কিছুক্ষণ আগে এদিকে মিছিল বের করে আমাদের উপর ইট পাটকেল মারছে, আমরা ওই যে 5-6 জন অ্যারেস্ট করেছি, আমাদের ফোর্সে একজন আহত হয়েছে, এবং তারা আছে, তারা বিভিন্ন জায়গায় সারা দেশের থেকে আসছে।
There has never been love lost since when the liberation of Bangladesh between Mujibur Rahman's party and the Jamaat-e-Islami party. And also Begum Zia has had some kind of subtle links with the Jamaat-e-Islami. So she's not as interested in this. So that is why Begum Hasina will gain politically from this movement. And with politicians, it's difficult to say whether they're thinking politically or not. It'd be very unlikely for them not to think politically with the elections coming. So yes, there is a political motive. Usually politicians do have a political motive. We know that recently there was an execution in India. There was a political motive. So I think even if there is a political motive, there is also a juristic, a legal motive of the crimes that have been committed. And by now the Bangladeshis have documented them quite well. Because there was, so many people who were injured. They just, there were just lists upon lists upon lists. And I think people in South Asia generally feel that if this kind of crime has been done, for example, in the north, Tamil north of Sri Lanka, then action should be taken. And the only difference of opinion is how severe is severe. People like me say life imprisonment for life is enough. Begum Hasina and her followers say no, death sentence is what is required. But how many people will they give the death sentence? I mean, thousands were involved in the killing. After all, the troops who were captured by India were 90,000 plus. And a number of them were involved in killing. And you don't kill one person. Once you're asked to kill, you kill 5, 10, 15, 20. So what do you do about that? So I think it is a part of Bangladesh's history. It is a part of an attempt to rob them of their chance at freedom, to destroy their intellectuals, to kill all their politicians, to rape their women. It's an unspeakable act of genocide. And for genocide, by law, any punishment is adequate. I'm just talking about my idea of severest punishment to get the country together again. But the fact that a crime which was in detail solved in 1972, 1973 raises its head in 2013 shows that it is part of the memory, the part of the traditions of Bangladesh, and they won't forget them, and so they want closure this way. So if they're willing to make that sacrifice, I wish them luck.
Bloggers and online activists have given birth to a historic political movement where common citizens seek closure to old wounds. The Parliament is now expected to pass a bill whereby the prosecution and defence have equal right to appeal. This will give the prosecution the right to appeal that Mullah be given a harsher punishment than he was awarded. There have been criticisms against the International Crimes Tribunal and whether the trials have been fair without prejudice. But hundreds of thousands who gathered at Shahbag in Dhaka have faith in the credibility of the trials. All they want is that no criminal should get away with a lesser sentence. More on that in the coming episodes. Thank you for watching Bangladesh Today. Hello and welcome to Bangladesh Today. It's been a tumultuous week in Bangladesh where a political revolution of sorts is underway.
Judgment of a life sentence of the war criminal Mr. Quader Mollah. Now we are here, we are protesting in demand of his hang till death.
Shahbag Square in Dhaka was renamed Projonmo Chhatar, or New Generation Roundabout. 3 generations of Bangladeshis spoke in one voice. The barbarians of the 1971 war crimes must be given the maximum. They came in thousands, and then tens of thousands, and then hundreds of thousands, all through voice of mouth, Facebook, Twitter and blogs, singing songs, coining slogans, poetry, music, and just one demand: justice.
I live in Australia and I am fortunate as a freedom fighter. I had a chance to be here to join the mass people of Bangladesh who has a voice for the right judgment for the war criminals. And we are really proud of the nation that our younger generation has come forward, took the street for the right judgment of the war criminals.
I am one of the online activists and we are protesting against the
It began when Abdul Quader Mollah, the Butcher of Mirpur, was convicted of beheading a poet and raping a preteen and shooting 344 people during the Liberation War of 1971 and got a life sentence instead of a capital punishment. Mollah emerged from the courtroom flashing a victory sign. It prompted online activists and bloggers to gather at an intersection in Dhaka to launch a unique protest movement.